Lydia, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see there's so many people on here. And hopefully we can start to answer Alan's question about, where did this start? Where did some of these protocols come from, and why did this project start in the first place? And so, but if we don't answer it very well, feel free we'll give you a chance to ask some more questions to hopefully give some clarity and some insight into that a little bit. So let me see. There we go. So I thought we would just start by talking about DSP projects in general. So what we're going to do is start pretty broad and then narrow down. So we're going to start with talking about, the national DSP effort, which is led by the NRCS National Headquarters, the Soil and Plant Sciences Division. They're the ones who kind of oversee the DSP projects. And so you can see here their website, they have a DSP team. And these are some of the charges. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but this is what they list as what the DSP team is working on at the national level. And so you can go to their website and find out more about, the big picture overall, what's going on with the national DSP projects. But there's also, I wanted to mention, there's a specific project that's called DSP for Soil Health. And so that project has a sort of separate website, and it lists some of their expected outcomes and some of the goals that they have for that specific set of DSP projects. And so I just wanted to highlight that this is a, national DSP effort. And they also have presented some of the why behind why they think it's important to focus on DSP, to invest in this. And so, they really want to be able to assess soil condition. They want to be able to predict and scale soil change. And then they want to be able to have like that database of information to be able to help improve conservation. You can see here in the bottom point here under to improve conservation, one of the key points you are going to hear again is that one of their goals is to calibrate and validate models that are used in conservation planning. So, what actually gets used at the field office level in terms of using soil health assessment. And so you'll see that's also one of the state and local goals as well. And so hopefully that gives you just a brief picture of the national DSP effort. And so now we're going to get into a little bit of what the Virginia NRCS priorities are for these DSP projects. And so start out with two main questions, and that is, what's the core question that we're trying to answer with DSP projects, and what is the core strategy that these projects use to answer that question? And so the core question is really, if we are going to apply the 4 soil health principles, do our soils really change? And if they do, how much are they changing? And the main way that we want to address that is to measure and compare the properties of soils that have been managed differently over time, but are inherently the same. So kind of like what Chris was saying before, he's been over this, but pretty much soils that were born the same, but have been managed differently over time. We believe that if we can measure and compare those properties, then we can help to answer this core question of, when we apply the 4 soil health principles, what does it do to our soils? And so the next thing we're going to do is Chris loves Venn diagrams. So we incorporated one here, and I'm going to actually let him kind of go through this and talk about some of the overlap between our national efforts and our state efforts.
Yeah, thanks, Lydia. And of course, thank you for putting a Venn diagram in here. So I should be the one talking about it, since I'm always trying to put a Venn diagram in every single project or every presentation. But look, the point that we wanted to graphically illustrate here, right, is that there is, in the green circle, right, there are national priorities for DSP, and there are national protocols. It's a fairly complex set of guidelines that you're going to hear a lot more about from Alexandra. When we recognize, and one of our guiding principles in our soil health strategy is recognizing we may need to adjust some of that to our state level priorities. And so the next, you can see here, these are some of the Virginia NRCS DSP priorities, like what we would like to achieve. Measurement with meaning, okay, that's important. We want things that are going to be useful to field staff and farmers. Two very, very important ideas. And then, we think these sites, finding these sites, we can use for education and demonstration, beyond just submitting, if you will, data that goes up to the national level through the Soil and Plant Sciences Division. And through this process, we want to gain experience, right, with soil health assessments. Which ones are practical and useful? Like, does it really make sense to run the Musameter, this many times across the field? And we want to validate sort of not just national models, but state level models. Corey Gilliams, he's our DC in Rockingham County where this occurred. So if Corey says, when I see farmers managing the soil this way, okay, my mental model is that is going to result in this and change, positive change over time, right? So we can try to validate that. But what we're really interested in is the overlap area, right? Because where does it overlap? Where can we get a win-win where the national DSP project protocols overlap with what we're trying to do? And that was a big part of what we're trying to accomplish. So just wanted that Venn diagram to highlight that we're trying to figure out our own priorities, but that overlap and trying to maximize that overlap win-win is what we want to do.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for going through that. And so hopefully you have a better understanding now of why, this DSP effort is happening at a national level and the state level. And so really, I guess that should have been called the why of NRCS DSP program. And next, we're going to start to answer Alan's other question, which is talking about, the protocols and procedures. And we're also going to get into why specifically a DSP project was started in the Valley. But before we do that, I wanted to just check to see if there were any questions or comments on that last section that we just went through.
Lydia, I did have a question. This is Alan. I'm sorry, I've just, rather than avoid the delay, jumped in. I would actually appreciate a few comments from Chris or you about how this division fits in with the soil health division and where, say, the state level Virginia has allegiance, or do you link into all of the divisions in NRCS, and do you get to choose? Thanks.
I'm going to pass that question over to Chris because he has been involved in this a lot longer than me. So I think he can probably give a little more in-depth answer on that.
That's a great question. And if you could go back maybe to I don't know if there's a need to go back to this slide. Let me put it this way, what we learn about our institutions, don't we, is that sometimes we communicate almost better with entities outside of our institutions than within them. And NRCS is a big organization and has different organizational structures. So within the state of Virginia, right, for NRCS, we only have about 150 employees. We have soil scientists. We also have agronomists, right? And we actually tend to talk more with our colleagues up the chain, right? So I tend to work more with the Soil Health Division, which is a division at national headquarters, which isn't shown here, but you can almost think of another circle, right? In the diagram, you could maybe think of a blue circle. Imagine that. And that's our Soil Health Division. And actually, Matt Denton, it looks like, is at least one of the Soil Health Division employees who's listening in today, right? So I'm work with Matt. I tend to work much more with Matt than I do with the Soils Division headquarters. Meanwhile, Alexandra Schmidt is a soil scientist with us, and she tends to orient and work towards and work more with our Soils Division. One of the things we learned in our Shaw project is that even in Virginia, where we're so proactive on soil health, we didn't fully know what our partners were doing just across county lines on soil health assessment. That's something we learned early in our project. So this need to promote better communication is crucial. We don't really have an allegiance to one division over the other, Alan. We are actually feel like our effort can hopefully help these national divisions, get to know each other better, because we're the interface where their efforts should, come hit the ground. So there may even be other entities that are getting interested in whether you call it dynamic soil properties or soil health, within NRCS. And so that coordination communication is needed internally as well as externally. And actually, we think maybe this series of webinars is going to hopefully help some of that happen. And I'll just point out, Alan is with USDA as well, right? We're one USDA. And so you're an ARS researcher, and we know you have worked really hard to have a lot of interface and interaction with other USDA folks, especially NRCS, which we're incredibly grateful for. But it just highlights how much effort we need to put into communicating and sharing. That's my attempt to address that. But, there may be some other folks on the line who work. I know there are folks on the line who work for these national divisions, and if they have any comments to add, this is a good time to do it.